Once upon a time, in a magical kingdom, there lived a kind and brave prince named Jack. He lived in a grand castle with his parents, the king and queen, and his loyal dog, Duke. The kingdom was peaceful and everyone lived happily, but the prince was always looking for adventure and a way to help the people of his kingdom. One day, the prince heard about a dragon that was terrorizing a nearby village. The villagers were afraid and had no one to turn to for help. Jack knew he had to do something to protect the people, so he gathered his bravest knights and set out to face the dragon. When they reached the village, the prince and his knights found the dragon sitting on a pile of treasure, guarding it fiercely. The prince approached the dragon and spoke to it in a calm voice. "Dragon, I know you are just protecting what is yours, but the people of this village are afraid and need your help. Can we come to a peaceful solution?" To the prince's surprise, the dragon responded in a gentle voice, "I have been waiting for someone like you, Prince Jack. I have been cursed by an evil witch and have been unable to control my actions. The only way to break the curse is for someone to defeat the witch and retrieve the magical amulet she stole from me." Without hesitation, the prince and his knights set out on a quest to find the witch and save the dragon. They traveled through dangerous forests and across rushing rivers, facing many challenges along the way. Finally, they reached the witch's castle, where they were greeted by an army of fierce goblins. The prince and his knights bravely fought the goblins and made their way to the witch's lair. There, they found the witch, who was more powerful than they had ever imagined. The witch cast spell after spell, but the prince was determined to break the curse and save the dragon. In a final showdown, the prince defeated the witch and retrieved the amulet. As he held the amulet, the prince felt a strange power surge through him. Suddenly, he was transported to a magical realm where he met the dragon. The dragon thanked him and told him that he was now the keeper of the amulet, which had the power to grant wishes and bring happiness to the people of the kingdom. With the amulet in hand, the prince and his knights returned to the kingdom, where they were greeted as heroes. The prince used the amulet to grant wishes for the people and make their lives better. The dragon was no longer cursed and lived happily in the magical realm, watching over the kingdom and helping the prince whenever he needed. And from that day on, the prince continued to use the amulet to bring happiness and peace to the kingdom, and he lived happily ever after. But little did he know, the witch was not defeated after all. She was only biding her time, waiting for the right moment to strike. And so, the adventure continued, with many twists and turns, but that is a story for another day. Years passed, and the prince became known as the wish granter for his use of the amulet to bring happiness to the kingdom. However, as the prince grew older, he began to realize that some of the wishes he granted were not what they seemed. People started to become greedy, and their wishes became dark and twisted. The prince started to see strange and frightening things happening in the kingdom. One night, as the prince was out on a walk with Duke, he had a voice calling to him from the darkness. It was the witch, and she had returned, seeking revenge. The prince was terrified and tried to run, but the witch had already cast a spell that trapped him and Duke in a dark, eerie forest. The prince soon realized that the amulet was missing and that the witch had taken it. He and Duke began to search for the amulet, but every path they took led them deeper into the forest, and the darkness seemed to be closing in around them. Suddenly, they heard a loud growl, and Duke ran off into the darkness, barking fiercely. The prince was left alone, and he soon came face to face with the witch. She was even more terrifying than he remembered, with glowing eyes and a wicked smile. She revealed to the prince that she had not only taken the amulet, but had also been manipulating the wishes he had granted. The prince was horrified to learn that the dark and twisted wishes had been her doing, and that she was now using the amulet to bring about a reign of terror in the kingdom. The prince realized that he was the only one who could stop the witch and save the kingdom. He drew on all of his bravery and confronted the witch in a final showdown. It was a fierce battle, with spells being cast and bolts of magic flying through the air. But in the end, the prince emerged victorious. He retrieved the amulet and broke the spell that had trapped him and Duke in the forest. When he returned to the kingdom, the prince found that the people were no longer greedy and that the kingdom was once again a peaceful place. The prince destroyed the amulet, knowing that its power was too great to be trusted to any one person. But as the prince and Duke walked back to the castle, they both had a feeling that they were being watched. The witch's laughter could be heard echoing in the distance, and they both knew that the danger was far from over. The witch was still out there, waiting to strike again, and the prince and Duke would have to be ready for the next time she returned. And so, the prince lived in a state of constant vigilance, always ready for the next challenge and the next twist in his never-ending adventure. Years went by, and the prince was still ruling the kingdom with wisdom and fairness. However, strange things began to happen in the kingdom. People would disappear without a trace, and the prince could not figure out what was happening. He knew that the witch was still out there, and he feared that she was up to something sinister. One day, Duke ran into the castle, barking frantically and leading the prince to a hidden door in the castle's basement. The prince followed Duke down to the basement and found a mysterious room filled with ancient artifacts and forbidden books. He began to investigate, and he discovered that the artifacts had belonged to a powerful sorcerer who had lived in the kingdom many centuries before. The prince soon realized that the sorcerer's spell book was missing, and he knew that it was the key to solving the mystery of the disappearing people. He and Duke set out on a journey to find the spell book, but their search led them to a dark and treacherous forest. As they journeyed deeper into the forest, the prince and Duke encountered many obstacles and strange creatures. But they pressed on, determined to find the spell book and unravel the mystery of the disappearing people. Finally, they reached the sorcerer's castle, and the prince discovered that the witch had taken the spell book and was using its power to control the kingdom from the shadows. The prince knew that he had to face the witch again, but this time, he was better prepared. He used his cunning and bravery to outwit the witch and retrieve the spell book. He broke the witch's spells and freed the people who had been taken, but he soon realized that the witch had one final trick up her sleeve. The prince was shocked to discover that the witch was actually the sorcerer, who had been using her magic to prolong her life and seek revenge on the kingdom. The sorcerer had been waiting for the prince to retrieve the spell book so that she could use its power to destroy the kingdom once and for all. The prince and Duke engaged the sorcerer in a final battle, and the prince emerged victorious. He destroyed the spell book and banished the sorcerer from the kingdom forever. The kingdom was once again at peace, and the prince had solved the mystery of the disappearing people. But as the prince and Duke returned to the castle, they both had a feeling that the mystery was far from over. The sorcerer's laughter could be heard echoing in the distance, and they both knew that there was still much more to be discovered about the kingdom's dark and mysterious past. And so, the prince lived on, always seeking the truth and always ready for the next adventure and the next twist in his never-ending journey. Years passed, and the kingdom was enjoying a time of peace and prosperity. However, the prince always felt that something was off. He had a sense that there was still danger lurking in the shadows, and he was determined to find out what it was. One day, while exploring the castle's attic, the prince stumbled upon a mysterious box. The box was made of a strange metal and had a series of strange symbols etched into its surface. The prince was intrigued, and he decided to investigate. He and Duke set out on a journey to find the source of the box and its symbols. Their journey took them to a distant land, where they encountered a group of people who had been living in hiding for many years. The people told the prince about a powerful and ancient artifact that was said to have the power to grant any wish. The prince soon realized that the box was the artifact, and that the witch and the sorcerer had both been seeking its power. He knew that he had to keep the artifact out of their grasp, but he also realized that the people he had met were not who they seemed. The prince discovered that the people were actually part of a secret society that was tasked with protecting the artifact and ensuring that its power was never misused. However, the society had been infiltrated by the witch and the sorcerer, who were seeking to use the artifact to gain ultimate power and control over the kingdom. The prince was in a race against time to find the society's hidden temple and prevent the witch and the sorcerer from obtaining the artifact. He encountered many challenges and obstacles along the way, but he pressed on, determined to save the kingdom and protect the artifact from falling into the wrong hands. Finally, the prince reached the temple and found the artifact. He fought a fierce battle against the witch and the sorcerer, who had also arrived in search of the artifact. The prince emerged victorious, and he retrieved the artifact and broke the spells that the witch and the sorcerer had cast. The prince returned to the kingdom, where he learned that the secret society had been disbanded, and the artifact was no longer needed. He returned the artifact to the society and ensured that its power was never misused again. But as the prince and duke walked back to the castle, they both had a feeling that the danger was far from over. The witches and the sorcerer's laughter could be heard echoing in the distance, and they both knew that there would always be new challenges and new twists on their never-ending journey. And so, the prince lived on, always ready for the next adventure and the next mystery to solve. Years went by, and the kingdom was at peace once again. But the prince always felt that there was still something missing, and he was haunted by the memories of the witch and the sorcerer. He felt that there was more to their story, and he was determined to uncover the truth. One night, the prince had a strange dream. In the dream, he saw the witch and the sorcerer, and they were both pointing to a hidden location in the kingdom. The prince knew that the dream was a sign, and he set out to find the location that the witch and the sorcerer had shown him. He and Duke journeyed to a remote part of the kingdom, where they discovered an ancient temple that had been buried beneath the earth for centuries. The temple was filled with strange and mysterious artifacts, and the prince felt that he was closer to the truth than ever before. As he explored the temple, the prince discovered that the witch and the sorcerer were not the only ones who had been seeking the temple's secrets. He found evidence that a powerful and ancient cult had also been searching for the temple and its artifacts. The prince soon realized that the cult was still active, and that they were planning to use the artifact to unleash a dark and evil power that could destroy the kingdom. The prince knew that he had to act quickly, and he set out to stop the cult and prevent the artifact from falling into their hands. He encountered many challenges and obstacles along the way, but he pressed on, determined to save the kingdom and prevent the evil power from being unleashed. He finally reached the heart of the temple, where he discovered that the cult had already obtained the artifacts and were preparing to perform a ritual to release the dark power. The prince fought a fierce battle against the cult and their leaders, but he emerged victorious. He destroyed the artifacts and broke the ritual, preventing the dark power from being unleashed. The kingdom was saved, and the prince had solved another mystery. But as the prince and duke returned to the castle, they both had a feeling that the danger was far from over. The cult's laughter could be heard echoing in the distance, and they both knew that there was still much more to be discovered about the kingdom's dark and mysterious past. And so, the prince lived on, always seeking the truth and always ready for the next adventure and the next twist in his never-ending journey. The prince was not content with just solving the mystery of the temple and the cult. He felt that there was still more to uncover, and he was haunted by the feeling that there was a greater threat looming over the kingdom. One day, while exploring the kingdom's ancient ruins, the prince discovered a strange and mysterious book. The book was bound in human skin and was filled with dark and forbidden knowledge. The prince was immediately intrigued, and he began to read the book, determined to learn its secrets. As he read, he discovered that the book was a record of the kingdom's darkest and most ancient history. He learned of a powerful and malevolent entity that had once threatened the kingdom, and he realized that the entity was still at large, waiting to reclaim its power and rule the kingdom once again. The prince knew that he had to act quickly, and he set out to find the entity and prevent it from regaining its power. He encountered many obstacles along the way, including creatures that were beyond his imagination, but he pressed on, determined to save the kingdom and protect its people. Finally, the prince reached the entity's lair, deep within the kingdom's ancient ruins. He fought a fierce battle against the entity and its minions, but he emerged victorious. He destroyed the entity and prevented it from reclaiming its power. The kingdom was safe once again, and the prince had solved another mystery. But as the prince and duke returned to the castle, they both had a feeling that the danger was far from over. The entity's laughter could be heard echoing in the distance, and they both knew that there would always be new challenges and new twists on their never-ending journey. And so, the prince lived on, always seeking the truth and always ready for the next adventure and the next mystery to solve. The prince continued to protect the kingdom and its people, facing new challenges and solving new mysteries. And while he never knew what was waiting for him around the next corner, he always remained brave and fearless, determined to do whatever it took to protect the kingdom and its people. For he was the prince, the protector, and the defender of the kingdom, and he would always be ready for the next twist on his never-ending journey.